Steve, what's going on, man? This is fun. We haven't caught up in a while. We just caught up for a while pre-show, so I just want to jump right into this, give the audience what they want to hear from someone that's recently just won a nice title with the U.S. men's national team, but also running a super successful business down there in Florida. So happy to have you on here, man.
Adam, awesome to be invited on to the show, man. You know how I feel about you and everything that you're doing, so it's an absolute honor to be one of your guests.
Well, I appreciate it, man. So let's start with the origin story. It's always fun to hear how people in a space like you, who's had great experiences, where they started, where they came from, and how they got to where they are. So from physical therapy school to being a part of, the 2022 World Cup, the 2024 Nations League champs, what has been your journey?
Yeah, I think it's always fun to talk about everybody's paths, because we all kind of get there in a similar way in that it's very grindy. There's some luck involved, there's some timing involved, and there's just you just kind of stick it out, and then all of a sudden you're in a spot where you're like, how did I get here, right? And that my journey is really no different from that. But I think where it started for me, I kind of decided to go to physical therapy school, or at least try to get into physical therapy school, because I saw that there was a gap, between kind of this rehab piece and this performance piece. And, I suffered like a lot of, people in our practitioners in our position, tons of injuries. And I was like super diligent on following plans and processes, which I'm very big on, and I was still, not getting better. So I wanted to understand a little bit more why. So I figured getting into going to PT school to understand the medical side was probably a good route for myself. And it's in PT school, and I was introduced to Dave Tenney, and went out to one of his first sports science mentorship there in Seattle. And we talk about timing and luck. In that room were my now like kind of mentors. What the biggest one being Paul Caffrey, who's at Houston Dynamo. He ended up being my boss for 3 years, and I really credit kind of everything that I've done post Houston Dynamo to him, because of his mentorship, his tough love, and his brutal honesty, which made me better, which I'll forever be grateful. And then also in that room was Darcy Norman, who I currently work with on the national team. He is my boss and the high performance director. And then also in that room was Jordan Webb, who is just a world class. He'll get mad if he hears this. He is a world class sports scientist, but he's also a world class strength and conditioning coach as well. So yeah, between those three, I didn't know what I was walking into. Actually, those four, because Dave needs to be included in that mix as well. I was kind of walking into naively, a situation where it's like, oh, these guys are the top guys, right? So fast forward through PT school, I recognized the gap in the performance side. So I like a lot of practitioners, I worked as a outpatient ortho for close to 3 years, just seeing tons of people, getting experience, struggling with the number of people you had to see, and also volunteering as an assistant strength coach at my alma mater, Towson University. And that opened the opportunity to take on a role as a director of performance, whatever that means, with it's just one person as a director and an athletic trainer, in a small Division II school in Flagler. And that jump, allowed me to kind of jumpstart into an opportunity into professional soccer with Houston Dynamo, and spent some time there, and had the opportunity to go to Phoenix, which is where we connected, right? Where I spent 2 awesome seasons with them. From live in Florida, so we transitioned back to Florida, where I worked for a year in the military, kind of overseeing a group, a team, a true, I guess you could consider, director of performance, with a great team, a dietitian, other physio, and mental performance coach, which was an awesome experience. And then just the opportunity to move back to St. Augustine presented itself, and we looked at that as an opportunity that if we didn't take it, it wasn't good. We probably wouldn't be moving back. So I took the opportunity to move back and open up, just open up my own thing to see if it would work. And literally, I think a month after I opened up, I got a call from another legend, Steve Tashton, who was the former high performance director for the United U.S. national team, and asked if I'd be interested in joining them for qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. So how it happened, I have no idea to this day. They still won't tell me. Um, but of course, I took advantage of that, and my current role is still with the national team as one of the performance coaches, uh, in conjunction with my role as a business owner here in North Florida.
For the record, I still to this day am upset you moved out of Phoenix. Although you are doing great things in Florida, I was upset when you told me you were moving. I was like, man, that was good people that just left the area. But it just highlights one of the things about sports too is that it requires you to move. It requires you to kind of follow the opportunities. And I wonder if that's the same case for other industries. But it definitely was highlighted in your origin story of how you've had to, go where the opportunities were. But also one thing I want to highlight, what you did really well is you just put yourself in situations like right, the sports science conference up in Seattle, you put yourself in situations to be in the room with the right people, which call it luck what you may, but I promise you those opportunities that you are in now, right, are currently in, would not have been there if you didn't at least take that step forward yourself. So I think that's just important to highlight for yourself there, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I think I've always been kind of a calculated risk taker and a little bit, as my wife would say, a dreamer, And I am very much a dreamer, but I do think it's at the end of the day, you go in there with very low expectations and not expecting anything, just to connect with great people and learn something, and then just be nice and be kind and open and take constructive criticism, and you know uh, you're probably more likely to experience some cool things than if you were to go kind of polar opposite of that kind of mindset.
Yeah, speaking of dreams, was going to a World Cup always one of them?
Yeah, I mean, as a player first, but as a staff member, what is 100 is definitely a second, a close second. Um, I get asked that question a lot, like, what was your initial, you know, th- reaction? And I sincerely thought somebody was playing a joke on me. So I got a call and somebody said, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, cool. So what team? Like what team? Or they're like, Steve, it like the men's national team. Like, yeah, yeah, I know, but like what age group? Like the 20s, the 17s, like Steve, it's the fucking national team. You know what I'm saying? Like it's good. It's the national team. Sorry for cursing. It's like the full men's national team. And then I just paused and I was like, I'm in. And then I went to ask my wife if I could do it.
Ask for
Yeah.
forgiveness later. I love that.
That's right. That's right. Which of course she was, you know, as excited, if not more excited for me than I could have been. So super
Well,
grateful for her.
I'm super envious and also super happy that you got to experience it because truthfully, that is just an opportunity to be a part of. Because I just think that from afar, what it seems like is the World Cup is just a space of so much international flair and just a culture that is one to reckon with. So like I'm really curious. This one was in Qatar, which took Qatar in the winter, which flips everything on its head for the World Cup. World Cup traditionally happening in the summer, but Qatar had money, had deep pockets, convinced FIFA to play it in the winter. So I'm just really curious. I haven't spoken to anyone, not Darcy, not Steve. I haven't asked anyone really how like World Cup was. So from your experience, what was the World Cup like in the Middle East? Not only just the job, but also just life in general out there, because I bet you many people haven't lived in the Middle East.
Yeah, it was my first time in the Middle East, and definitely, as you could imagine, super like different from our norm, right? So I think I will say I think Qatar did a great job, with despite all the controversy with how they built stadiums, and of course that's it's not great, right? However, they did a really good job. It was beautiful, as far as all the stadiums were well designed, really kind of unique designs of a stadium I've never really seen before. So just the aesthetics of that was really really cool. Um, personally for our group, it was really comfortable. You know, we stayed at a really nice place called the Kapinski. It was right on the Persian Gulf, and you know, just to give you an idea of the scale, I think they had maybe five-star restaurants like in the hotel. You know, so it was massive. And that's where we were stationed, right? So that's where we were stationed. So it was really nice compared to other camps because, you know, we were there for 30, I think 33 or 34 days. And, you know, you don't move, you don't pack up and move, right? As you know how, you know what that can be, right? So it was very comfortable and you almost settle into like what you would typically be in a club setting, right? You kind of get up, you go through your daily processes, you go to training, you train, you come back, you go through your recovery strategies, and you kind of just repeat, you know, and you get on this cadence. And it was very much like that in Qatar. You know, we got to take over one of the one of the a team called Al Grafa. They're in the first fight in Qatar. We got to take over their training facility and kind of outfit it with all U.S. soccer paraphernalia, and you know, kind of wrapped everything. So it felt very much like a club setting where it was really nice, you know, because guys could, you know, they could come in, they could get something to eat, they could change, they could relax, they could do all their, you know, meetings with the technical staff, they could get a lift in, they could do some pre-work, you know, they could do their rehab, they could shower, and then we could go back, and then they could just enjoy in the hotel, you know, all the amenities. You know, we had a huge room that was designed, you know, that had like massive screen TV, a barber, you know, all the good food, big couches, pool table, you know, ping pong table. So all that kind of stuff so that they could really enjoy. And then we had a recovery lab that was kind of spearheaded by Darcy and Steve, you know, which had cryo chamber and infrared beds and hyperbaric chambers and dry float beds. And it, you know, it was just a really, really comfortable environment that I think a lot of the players, you know, said that this is, you know, this is like being at home. And I think that's what Greg was really adamant on, and the rest of the staff was adamant on. I was like, we don't want it to. It's already so different. You know, how can we make it comfortable as possible for all the players, so that when it comes time to play, it's like, you know, that's the focus. So for me personally, it was awesome. You know, but you know, it's like, as you know, in any professional sporting, you're never off, despite days off in the calendar. You know, you're always at least somewhat at a heightened state of anxiety because you're want to be present for anybody that needs anything. And this was no different. You know, to be completely honest, you know, you spend a lot of time in your area. You would go to training. You know, it was always interesting to get, you know, all the windows were taped on the door, on the windows and the doors because of potential security threats. You know, with, you know, bombing and that sort of thing. So that you had to go through that process all the time. They would clear the roads before you would go up. So all of that was very, especially early on, was very kind of unique um, to uh, to the experience, you know. And then also the call to prayer, like the Islamic prayer 6 times a day, where the whole, you know, the whole city stops, and you saw people getting out of their cars and you know, doing their daily prayer, which was, you know, very different from what you would see here in the United States. But something for me that was like, wow, you know, how many people know about that, you know, and how many people get to experience that difference in culture, especially when you're talking about this event like the World Cup. So for me, those were all really kind of unique and special moments that I'm glad I had the opportunity to be a part of.
Is there one memory or one core memory if we like pull on like Inside Out, you know, movie here? Is there one core memory that sticks out to you?
Oh gosh, one core. While there were many, many, many. I will have to say the match. You know, the matches always have this reel in your head, you know, because I mean, that's why you're there, right? Uh, but qualifying with Christian's goal against Iran, which was pretty special, um, and just the heightened sense of, uh, you know, I don't want to get political or anything along, but just the relationship between the two countries and just the heightened sense of like what it meant for both teams if you got the result and you were going through was really memorable. And I just remember coming back home and watching kind of the reaction of the entire United States, in a video clip to that goal, and to not realize it was that kind of scale until you see that video, and then you reflect back to where you were when that happened. You're like, oh man, that's much bigger than you could ever imagine, when it comes to kind of this like global sporting event.
Almost as you're describing it, I'm thinking over here, like thinking back to the miracle on ice that happened in the 1980 Olympics, right? Or 80, the 80 Olympics was in the 80s, right? The hockey team over the
Hmm.
Soviet Union during the Cold War. Not at that magnitude, but that's just kind of what I'm like. Oh, as he's describing it, that's kind of what it feels like here.
Yeah, yeah. I think like, and there were many moments. I mean, the England match was incredible. We played really, really well. When we played the Netherlands, that was just as, incredible because it's a knockout round, a knockout game. Um, but I think if you take the non game, the the relationship forged with the players because you spend so much time with them, uh, was incredible. And I think for me, that's the aspect that I value most is the relationship building, and having had the opportunity to be with these guys for that long, day and night, and just get to know them, get to know a little bit about their families, kind of what they're happy about, what they're struggling with, um, is pretty special. And now that I've gone through, I guess it's been over a year now since the World Cup, and having seen a lot of the guys in the camps, it's like you have this feeling like you guys share something, right? That's nobody else can really speak to because they didn't go to, right? But you share little locker room moments of, oh, I can remember, you know, certain players like, I mean, I should have made, if I could have finished that, it would have been different right now. Oh my God, just little moments like that. And I think, being a part of that, and having that tight knit, you know, time with those players, and then how those relationships have evolved since the World Cup, for me is super special. And something I'll always remember and be grateful for.
Those are the ones you hold on to, right? Those are those moments, those relationships, those times. Because you're as the locker room banter that you don't see on TV, that's probably the more memorable stuff than the actual result that you saw on TV. So that's cool
Hey,
that you had those, man.
hey, and that's the stuff that I think we all miss the most. You know what I mean? When we look back at it all.
Yeah, when
Yeah,
you mentioned in there, talk about when you go to camps, when you see the guys, because the national team cycle is different than club, right? You worked in a club setting, both in MLS and USL, but now you're at the national team level. I'm not sure all everyone understands or appreciates what the calendar year looks like, let's say, not only for a staff member, but also the US players themselves. So if we were to
yeah.
say, I don't know when's a good point to start in a calendar year, but if you could take us like through like kind of like a 12-month cycle of what maybe that looks like, just to paint the picture before we start diving into some of the X's and O's of kind of how you
Yeah,
attack that.
yeah. So I guess the best way to start is like, a typical currently the current kind of national team cycle is like, we'll have a camp in January. Camps will typically run anywhere from 12 days to 21 days, So in January we'll have a camp. In March we'll have a camp that is usually a FIFA window, right? So all the clubs shut down that follow the FIFA window. The clubs shut down so that players can participate. So March is a camp, and then the summertime, June to mid July, we'll have. This summer we're super fortunate to be in Copa America, but a lot of times it'll be Gold Cup, so that will start to flip flop now. So that's like a 6 week stint, and then September, October, and November there'll be like a 2 week camp in each of those months, and then the calendar year is done. So that's kind of the national team flow. One of the things that you see with domestic-based players, like guys playing in MLS, and even Mexico, is it's a little bit different than European-based calendar. So I think the European-based calendars is a lot, it's like August to May, where the domestic is going to be, I guess now it's, preseason is, end of January and it goes all the way to just before Thanksgiving. So the staff chooses, players, obviously, so given they're playing well, right? But then there's also some thought given to, where this Gold Cups in the summertime. Does it make sense to have a mix of European-based players and domestic players? Does it make sense to have a more of an MLS-based or domestic-based team, or does it make sense to have a European-based team? Considering like where they are in the season, European players, Gold Cup, they just played, some of them 60 games, right? 50 to 60 games in a season. So is it good to bring them in or do they need to rest? Versus MLS guy or, domestic players are coming, they're in the middle of their season and they're flying, so how does that play into the equation? So, I'm not a technical staff member. However, I think these are all the conversations that the coaches have and are always thinking about when they're bringing players in and out. And I think, fortunately for us, we have an unbelievable pool of players, both domestic and abroad. So it really allows a lot of flexibility when selecting rosters.
There's a lot more thought that goes into the roster than what you see on TV because I
Yeah.
think when I've observed certain competitions or camps, I just like to think I see January is tends to be more like domestic heavy because it's MLS off season is what I've observed. I could be wrong. And then maybe summertime because it's the middle of the summer, maybe I've observed more European participation. And then to your point, it just depends because MLS and it's when it originated back in '94, it wasn't as prominent as some of the European leagues, so it had to play offsetting that, but also MLS was originated playing around football stadiums. So I do realize like that's why the MLS season is when it is
Mm-hmm.
to work around those. So it's really interesting to just hear your perspective, someone that works it. So then if we kind of double click on that, right, we laid the groundwork of, hey, here are our constraints, both environment. Okay, we have camps may be at different locations. Correct me if I'm wrong. Camps are at different locations across the country. They're not always in the same one.
Correct. Yeah. As of right now, as you may have heard that in Atlanta, they're building the training center. So
Yeah.
I would imagine when that gets built, that a lot of stuff will be based out of there. But currently, we've been operating just kind of in different locations throughout the country or abroad.
Right. So then we have different locations. So we have the environment constraints, you have time constraints of the FIFA breaks, 12 to, what say 14, 16 days is typically a camp.
Mm-hmm. 12 to
Okay.
20, 12 to 21. Yeah. 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
So then let's talk about how do you approach managing the health and performance from your role, the health and performance of the players that come in.
Yeah. So I think you have to acknowledge the work of Darcy Norman, Jordan Webb, and Steve Tashton for this piece. What those three guys have been able to do as far as building systems and processes long before I got there, and the relationships they've been able to forge with a big thing with national team is that the national team wants a player, the club wants the player. The clubs don't think the national team cares and will just kill the player, right? And give the club a broken player back. So Steve, Darcy, and Jordan have just done an unbelievable job at forging the relationships with all the clubs around the world. And I'm talking about providing. We get. Jordan has built a system where we get all the data from the players, 4 weeks of data to understand exactly where they are, at any given time. He's built a tool to understand predictive models of like what the loading strategy should be for these players coming in. All this information is Darcy obviously communicates with all the clubs and knows all the nuances of where players are coming from, as far as, injury history, current stresses the players might be going through. And that's in collaboration with the medical team, right? So when players come in, you're getting a snapshot of like exactly what they've done in the past month, and that's amazing. That's amazing because the clubs, the information that goes back is just as robust. So it's like the player never left. So they understand that it's not this huge gap for a player's kind of loading strategy. I guess you could call it. Or if the player's coming in with a little niggle, they're not coming back in a worse off position. And it's been amazing to watch how open the clubs are, to provide all the information. And it has everything to do with the relationships that Steve, Darcy, and Jordan have forged with those clubs. And then, everybody wins. The player wins. We win because we understand what we can and can't do with players, as far as from a risk tolerance standpoint. And then the club wins because they're getting back a player who is happy that they've been called up for international duty. It's better for the club, right, with having an international player on their team, and they know that their players getting taken care of. So, I mean, that's a little bit of the process, and a lot of praise has to go to those three guys for building those systems.
Absolutely, they do because I know each of those individuals and appreciate the expertise that each of them brings to the table.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
seconding with you. Yeah, one thing I'm keen to ask, but also want to respect the privacy of it. If you can shed some insight. So when you say you're assessing the risk tolerance, because that's what's so fascinating about a national team camp is when you bring in players that maybe a player was a starter on his club and they just had a high density schedule, or maybe they were
Hmm.
reserve and they're only playing 30 minutes, or perhaps that player is playing a different position on the club team versus the domestic, versus the
Hmm.
international team, excuse me, domestic versus national. So I'm really just keen to understand. Again, this is selfish in my own personal
Yeah,
understanding because it always fascinated me. Like, how do you manage those many variables? Because it seems on the surface so complex, almost to the point like, is it even possible? But it sounds like y'all have done it. So I'm really just curious what
yeah,
that process looks like,
yeah.
if possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this, like if we know principles, right, that, it's kind of spikes in those intensive metrics are like risky, you know, and if a player hasn't been playing much at the club, but they come to the national team and they're an important player, I mean, if Darcy and Jordan, I like the level of detail that goes into understanding, hey, if they were to do this on this day, this on this day, this on this day, what percent increase is that compared to their most difficult thing that they've done in the past 3, 7, 28 days, and understanding what that loading strategy of the week will look like. I mean, it is really impressive the systems they've kind of put in place and the level of detail they go to ensure that player health is at the forefront, right? And that they can provide the best information to Greg and the staff, so that they can make the best decision from a technical tactical standpoint. Um, as far as like the nitty gritty of that, man, you're gonna have to get Jordan on here and to give you a little bit of that insight because looking at his graphs and his data, it's like something of what's that beautiful mind. He'll hate that I say that, but it's true. It's really, really impressive. He's got a gift for it and building those tools.
We'll put a pin in that one and save some of the deeper questions for Jordan and to give credit where credit's due. So then
It's
more on, let's get back to you. Like, we talked about Jordan, Doris, and the work that they've done. I really want to, you're here for a reason too. You're an expert in yourself. I really want to hear kind of your perspective and your role with how you are managing the day to day to also provide
yeah,
quality training and therapy because that's who you are. That's what you do. So let's double click on you for a sec and let's talk
yeah.
about kind of the role that you have and what you're providing for the guys.
Yeah, yeah. So a big role of mine, I probably interface with the players more than I'm one of the staff members that interfaces with the players the most, I think. And I think that's an important role and I don't take it for granted, one big thing being that understanding how they're coming in from how they responded to training, from the previous day. So wellness is a big piece of that, right? It's nothing sexy or new, but as far as understanding, hey, is there isolated stiffness? Is there decreases in isometric strength scores? What does the sleep look like? Are you in a bad mood? And then opening those doors and having those conversations and working in conjunction with the medical staff prior to training to make sure that we triage any red flags. That's a really big piece. The second big piece is like, I deal with all the strength pieces. So clubs will send over plans most of the time. Sometimes they don't, but just understand where the players are in their kind of supplemental plans from a strength or prehab piece, and seeing how we can continue to support them. Sometimes clubs can have limited resources and players want a little bit more, whether that be structure or just based off of the constraints of where they are. We make sure that we provide that for them. The other piece there is, we do a lot of Darce and I, and Jordan, but Darce and I do a lot with different technologies and testing out. That's one of my roles actually. Is Darce gives me all these technologies and I bring them back to the clinic and I test them out, and then we bring them to the national team and we try some things out. And one really cool product is a view motion product, which looks at the entry speeds and deceleration work. Really cool, really easy, really really easy to use and implement in a team setting. And so kind of taking all those pieces to try to build this profile for guys and try to get them exactly what they need and support them at the club with very specifics based off of kind of where they have deficiencies in those different types of kind of KPIs, if you want to call it. So that's an ongoing process, but one that Darcy and I always joke about. It'd be great to be in a club. Like it'd be great to be in a club and do all these cool things. But the fact is you're really limited, right? So you just try and if you can add one little piece at a time, and then help one player or help a player with one little snippet, of how they can improve or how they perceive they can improve. That's a big win, right? Fine, that's a small win, right? So that's where I live. It's first interaction with the players, understanding kind of where they're coming from the previous day's training, communicating that, and then understanding what's going to happen from a supplemental standpoint pre and post training, and then of course anything that happens on the field, supporting Darce with some warm ups and those types of things. That's really my role in a nutshell. And I always bring the music. So when Tim Weah isn't in the house, it's up to me to make sure that I bring it. And I think I do an all right job.
Please tell me there's a channel that we can follow that says Steve Sells US team playlist, so we can all rock out to that in the locker room. I would love to
it,
access that playlist.
You know what? I'll see what I could do. I'll see. I don't know if it's not named anything. I'll see what I could do.
Name it something. We're going to put it in the show notes because everybody needs to hear that playlist. I hope
Okay.
there better be a mix of 80s in there too, man.
Oh, we got to know those audience, man. Those, I will say this. I could not believe it. I won't name names because I'm actually embarrassed. But I had Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg playing on one day, and two of the players looked at me and goes, "Hey, who's this?" I said, "It's
Oh
this."
no!
And they had no idea. And I said, "Oh, oh." Matt Turner looked at us and shook his head and he goes, "I can't believe it." Yeah.
Oh, speaking of someone that started from nothing, man. So proud of Matt Turner, man, for where he started to where he got to now. When I was in MLS, he was third string in New England, and now to see him starting for the national team and having success in EPL, I mean, shout out Turner, man. That's incredible, man. Also got a great Instagram handle, Head Turner, wonderful.
Hey, he's not only is he a great, he's an unbelievable goalkeeper. He's an amazing human, and he's an example of somebody who has an unwavering mindset. And we always enjoy when he's in camp.
He's great, man. So hey, let's pivot here, right? We've spent a lot of time here highlighting the success you've had in the pro sports space, but one thing that you said to me before we hit record on this episode, we were both talking about kind of new ventures we're exploring, and you said this quote, like, it's time to cash in. You sacrifice a lot working in sports, and sometimes it's cash in to reap the benefits of that. And so you've done that yourself, where you've built your own business, very successful down there. So I really wanted to highlight that here and kind of talk how you went from the pro sports space to now running a successful performance practice down there in Florida.
Yeah, yeah, I think, a lot of the same principles apply. It's just a different look, you know what I mean, as far as professional sporting setting versus the a private sector. I think, the mission, of redefining commercial healthcare to optimize those unique needs of a high performing individual, across the lifespan. Like that's the mission. And if you look at the mission, it's the same thing you would do for a professional athlete. It's the same stuff. At least that's how I view it. It's just a continuum. So I always felt, as we were kind of alluded to before the show, you know, the stuff that you do, it's not reserved only for professional athletes, right? It's for everyone, And I think the way that the traditional healthcare model is, it does two things for me. It doesn't, you don't have the time to be able to implement it, and because the processes aren't there. And then the second that piggybacks off of that is most people don't know how, because they've never had the experience of being in the environment of where it actually works and how much benefit it can give, not only the practitioner, but most importantly, the client or the athlete you're working with. Um, so really, it's the same ideas and principles. How can you bring a high performance setting to the private sector? And to be honest, Adam, I was just super stubborn, man, and just refused to do it any other way. And for me, people would say, hey, take insurance, you leave money on the table. What do you mean you only see six people a day? How are you doing that? And for me, it's of course we all need to make a living and make money, but I was always of the mindset that just do good work, be a good person, help people, do what you say you're going to do, and all that other stuff will come. And it certainly has. So, yeah, the way that the business is run now is that it's super low volume, uh, but very individualized, from a relationship standpoint, and then also a care standpoint. And it's proven to be, as I told you before, if you would have said, almost 3 years now, that it would be where it is now, I would have laughed, and honestly wouldn't I would have told you I don't know if I want that. But as you evolve and grow and you stay within your value system, you just kind of walk through the next door. If it's a calculated risk that you feel makes sense, that gets you closer to that mission, you know?
Man, I love that about you. Just staying true to who you are and what you know, man, and also just finding the success. And like you said, what I just heard is to take one step forward after the other, and that'll eventually follow you as long as you do good work. And speaking of doing good work, like I know you're a sharp guy, you've been exposed to a lot of things. Really curious, like let's not get into the weeds too much here. But let's maybe 10,000 foot view. Someone walks into your clinic. By the way, we got to give a shout out to your name. Remind everyone what the name of the
Yeah,
clinic is?
yeah, it's, you know what? No judgment, because it's a long name, and I would have changed it if I would have known, especially the email address, but it's called Performance Science in Rehab. Yeah, and
There you go.
I wanted to capture, that it was a data informed approach to your rehab process. Um, so yeah, I get some stick for that from a couple of my buddies, but it's all good. I'll take it. I'll take it. If it's as
All right,
successful as it is now, and it's just, I'll take it.
hey, you can always register a DBA and come up with something else. So,
That's right.
but hey, let's you talked about data informed. So let's like I
Mm,
said, 10,000 foot view. Someone walks into your facility. What does that process look like?
yeah, yeah. So somebody walks in. We try to make it. Of course, this is evolving. But the idea is they come in, they do a wellness questionnaire. So we're fortunate to have Kitman Labs, in the house. Within the clinic, which is unique to a private sector physical therapy spot. So they come in, they do their wellness. So we get that, kind of locked in, so we can hold those folks accountable and understand, give them a taste of what it's like to, hey, this is a process you have to be involved in. We're not the ones fixing you; it's you fixing yourself. We're just kind of helping you facilitate some better behaviors. Um, and then we do a little performance profile. They come in, it's your movement screen, right? We have a movement screen, that is eclectic that we've taken from a lot of different areas, to build kind of this, like, what does this global profile look like versus down to isolated pieces, from a movement standpoint. What does single leg, you know, profile movements strategies look like? What do isometric strength numbers look like in different, for different, you know, areas of the body? And then how well do you produce, create, and transfer forces? And we use force plate stuff. We use isometric strength piece, some eccentric force, eccentric strength pieces, and then just this movement screen to build kind of this three-dimensional, you know, profile for the individual. And then we'll also take that for some of our uh, younger athletes, or so we get a lot of people that really just no injury. They just want to understand how they can upgrade their training, which is great. So we just partnered with a gym where we're kind of built into their membership now, where it's like any member that comes in, they have to get a performance profile, or else they can't be a member, and it's a way that we can communicate with their training staffs on, hey, these are areas of concern. If you're gonna overload, these are patterns to overload. These are ones to kind of maintain, and these are ones to stay away from for the time being, or find a different strategy to get away. And it's been very, very uh, well received, where people feel like they just have a plan moving forward. So that's the initial piece, and then the goal is really, we might see somebody once a week for 4 weeks. That's pretty, once a week for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they're done. But what happens is inevitably they always want to stay on for once a month to get a tune up, and to learn some different things from a rehab or a training standpoint. So it's been a really interesting evolution, and I guess it's been a little over 2.5 years that we've been apart, and we've, small little St. Augustine, we've seen over 550 to 600 people within the community. So with myself and one other practitioner. So it's been really cool and really fun.
There was one word you said that resonated with me, and I want to kind of hone in on that. You said, people come in there looking to, you partner with the gym and like you provide the profile, and here's something that you can upgrade to what you do, right? So one thing I'm curious on, like from your experience, that if you've gone both business, you've done pro side, for the general audience that's listening here, from the lessons that you've learned, the experience that you had, if they were trying to upgrade their own health and performance, or their own training and rehab, like what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think for me the most important thing is like just consistency. Like, don't get bogged down into the details. Just show up and and try to form a habit. Like, that is my biggest piece of advice for anything, really. But I think when I don't know if you feel the same, Adam, when you speak to younger practitioners or those looking to kind of break into the sporting world, or whatever that might look like, they're very eager to know the stuff that, that's really kind of, it's kind of cool, it's kind of interesting, and they, without kind of owning the basic pieces, right? And I kind of look at this as the same, where, you know, you got to kind of earn the right to go to that next level. And by earning that right, you just got to show consistency day in and day out when it's not sexy, you know? And that for me it would be the advice that I would give to anyone kind of looking to upgrade anything, not just your health and well-being, but just anything that you're trying to kind of do that's long term. Can you be consistent?
That echoes similar but different realm of advice. We had a Dr. Pat Davidson on recently, and he's embarking on bodybuilding himself right now. Just like I said, he's a meathead nerd, fat out Pat. But his advice was like, man, to grow muscle, you got to do the mundane, boring shit. It's not sexy, it's not fun, but
Yeah,
that's what gets the results. Not changing what you do every 2 to 4 weeks because you're bored. And so what I'm hearing from you too is the consistency component is is what gets the results. Is that fair to say?
100%, 100%.
So then from the consistency from building habits, it sounds like you got to kind of have some pep talks with some of the clients you have, maybe some of the athletes you have too, right? Which to me resonates is how are you going to win the day, right? Some people say win the day, some people say win the game, right? We're all about, you and I know, in the rehab space and also the performance space. Sometimes it's hard to find the successes
Hmm.
when the going gets tough or the emotional toll is high. So how are you helping? Let's even pause there for a second. Like, what would you define as a small win?
Yeah. So for me, like a small win is the outcome. That the small win is the outcome. But I'm a very process oriented person. So if I can kind of take it in a different direction and say, if the small win is the outcome, the path, along the process that you take is the path or the steps that you take to kind of meet your mission, your vision mission, right? So I define a small win as if I can look back at the day, and I do this every day, you reflect on your day and then you say, am I closer to what my mission is, not only as your business, but also just as you are as a human being, and if I can say that was really good, that's a step that needed to take, that's a step that needed to happen. If I acted this way, then there's no way that that lends itself to getting me closer to this piece. Then I can't look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, I did a good job today. But if I can look at all those little pieces, all those little steps that kind of got me to where I ended up at the end of the day and say, hey, does that make sense? That lends itself to who I am as a human and my mission, vision, values? Then I feel really good about it. And to me, that's a small win. And I try to do that every day. And I will say there are most days I can pick elements and say, you know what, that maybe wasn't so good, but all these other ones, kind of balance this other one out and actually exceed it. So I'm going to say, you know what, we're a step closer, we can move it forward. So it's not exactly a definition as it is a kind of a thought process around, you know, how I try to apply the principles of consistency in my life to reach some of these goals that you don't even know what your goal is yet, right? You just have this kind of broad brush that looks cool, I mean, I remember back in 2009 watching a World Cup game at a tiki bar, or not it was like a CONCACAF, it was like Confederations Cup World National Team game at a tiki bar, and just thinking to myself, oh gosh, man, that'd be awesome to be there one day. And I was like, how am I ever going to get there? I'm not even in, at that time I wasn't personal training, not in PT school or anything like that. So it's just, you never know, but I like to think it's the consistency of the steps that you take that are kind of molded by your values, by your value system that kind of put you in places that allow you to take a step forward or to keep just going.
Man, that was a breath of fresh air. Thank you for that, man.
Yeah.
It's very clear in who you are and what you're about. And that resonates not only in this conversation, but just I know when we try to do it, man. It's very clear. And you can tell on the website too, you're very clear of like what your business is about, what you're trying to do. I mean, you even said it, man, we only take 6 people a day. I'm here to do good work at high quality that fits within what we're trying to do. I'm here for it. And if you're not, that's okay. And I just really appreciate the process perspective rather than, like you said, a terminal definition of what it is and
Yeah.
how you get there. I think the how is probably, I'll walk away with that piece saying, oh, Steve is all about the how. And did I just move forward? Not to pull on one of my favorite shows, but, Ted Lasso, great show, by the way.
Yeah.
There was like one of like the, it's like the series, the season finale of series episode season three, excuse me, season three episode finale, and like Roy Kent. It's like what you just described, like it resonates with the scene. Like Roy Kent is like, how do people change? And Higgins, the president of basketball ops, goes, man, you just something on the lines of what you just said. Like nobody's perfect, but all you do is you take one step forward, doing something good, ask for help when you need it, and you just move closer to perfect. So I
Yeah.
think that's
And
just kind of what I heard from you. But I had to give a shout out to my
no,
favorite show.
oh, hey man, I love, I think all of this is possible because of the mentors, right? And to the people that you've had, who've taken a chance and brought you in, and like I I genuinely feel that I have had the opportunity to be around, I'll speak like to the soccer space, like the top guys, you know what I mean? And I think that's rare, but I don't think that happens if you are an asshole, and I don't think that happens if you're not well intended. At least I'd like to think that. And I also think it's good to kind of, operate low key, you know, be somebody who's more low key, listen more than you talk, you know, and that kind of methodology for me has always worked. It's never been one to kind of beat your chest a bunch and say, hey, look at me over here. It's more like, gosh, just to be in the presence of some of these really amazing people is enough. And like for me, I've always been able to have a lot of satisfaction internally, just being accepted into groups of people that I have a lot of respect for, and that's good enough. And that's good enough. So I also think that's another thing that I try to reflect on is like, were you true to your, were you humble, or did you have good vulnerability with people? Were you honest? I'm not one that loves confrontation, you know, but and pro sports, you learn like you have to speak up and you have to say things when things need to be said. And I think that's something, that you grow into, um, out of I won't say necessity, but just as a practitioner, right? That's how you get better. And I think as long as you have a system that allows you to say, not go crazy, with how you kind of articulate that to people and you show respect, then that's good. That's good. That's great growth, um, and I think it's always changing. I think every phase, as you know, being a new dad, now you're soft, right? Right? I know I am. I know I think I cry like every week now. I'm like, what is going on here? Just out of just being, watching him do different things. So it's just like, it's funny how it all evolves and all shakes out.
It is. It's yes to all of that, and
Yeah,
I'll share that with you. Yes, the new
yeah,
the new dad changes you, man, for sure. But hey, man,
yeah.
we're running up on time here, and I want to have some fun with you. You're a
Cool.
well-traveled man, well-experienced man. Let's just hit with some quick hitters, and then we'll wrap things up for everybody here. What? Yeah. Hey, what's your favorite American city that you traveled to?
Favorite American city? Oh gosh, my, I would have to say there are a couple. Um, I really, I really enjoy, I mean, I really enjoy San Diego. I really like San Diego. I actually really enjoy, believe it or not, Phoenix. I really enjoy Phoenix and miss Phoenix, man. Um, but if I were to choose, kind of if I keep going over all the way on the East Coast, Charleston's a really cool little town, Charleston, South Carolina.
Hmm.
So I will give you one from each region.
How about favorite international city?
Favorite international. I really enjoyed my time in Prague when I went to Prague. So that was really cool. And then Cologne, Germany was also very cool. Um, in a different way. I was in love with how green and how all the bike paths that would go through the forest and how accessible everything was by bike. That was really really cool. But Prague for sure was a really really cool city.
Now, on this next one, no names needed, but your most memorable locker room moment.
Witnessed I witnessed a staff member after qualifying for the World Cup. I witnessed a staff member run out into the room with a bottle of champagne spraying, slipped, slide tackled three players, and one of the players almost like, severely injured himself. That was pretty awesome. Didn't happen, didn't severely, but it could have been so much worse than what it was.
Yeah, it sounds like one of those stories you'll laugh at for ages, but God, God willing, no one got hurt there, else you would not be laughing in that moment. So
Uh,
that's one of
uh,
those. Ooh, I'm glad that didn't happen. No, that's absolutely hilarious.
yeah, it was great. It was great.
How about any, like you said, you experience businessman, pro sports, national team, World Cup, Nations League champ. Advice for any young coach or therapist who, let's just say, is looking to get into pro sports.
Yeah, I think the first part is you're going to really want to ask yourself, why you want to get into it. It's not all what you see on TV is the nice part. What you experience behind the scenes is an absolute grind and requires a lot of humility and vulnerability. And I think, if you were to tell younger practitioners that, hey, you're going to be up until 4 o'clock in the morning, breaking equipment down, putting it up, storing it away multiple times over the course of a camp, and making shakes and cleaning things, they might look at you with two heads, and that's the reality. And for me, that's high performance. Can you do those things consistently well, even the most mundane things that some might think they are above them? But in the right culture and the right environment, it is absolutely essential to have that bit of work ethic and mentality going into a sporting environment. But that would be the first thing. Ask yourself, why you want to do it, and then the second thing is, you know, it's important to connect with people in the right way. Don't make it so transactional, one way, as far as expecting people to just give you all this information and make time. Um, be mindful of people's time, and come with good questions, and really have an interest in getting some things answered. Uh, Adam, I don't know what your experience has been, but there are some times that, because of the enthusiasm, that can be lost. So make sure when you're having and reaching out, to have a plan, have a well thought out, discussion points, and be willing to contribute to the conversation.
Oh, I share the same advice. I get that question a lot. Like, hey, how do I reach out? I was like, hey, just bring it to the table.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like we're all the busy lives. We all got jobs to do, and yes, like we want to help the next generation and elevate those coming through. And at the same time, there's always something that you can bring to the table, right? Whether it's just like, finding a way to provide some education, offer some help, but just coming, like you said, one way. Those one-way transactions are felt pretty quickly, and they're not genuine, and they usually don't get you too far. So I appreciate you shouting that out. And so, hey, last minute,
Yeah,
let's
man.
wrap this up and make sure people know where to find you. So where can they tune into you, what you're about, and if they want to work with you, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, yeah. So again, apologies for the long email, but I can leave it in the show notes with Adam, but it's going to be Steve at performancesciencerehab.com. Uh, website is www.performancesciencerehab.com. I am on LinkedIn, under Steve Fell, and we do have an Instagram handle at Performance Science Rehab. That where we post a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. But any one of those platforms, I can be reached, and I will do my very best to get back to you in a timely manner if anybody has any questions or just wants to chop it up and talk shop.
So, man, well, hey, thanks for coming on, Ted. This was fun to catch up and just learn some things from you. It was great.
Cool. You're the man, brother. I miss you, man.
I miss you too, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, dude. Later.